The chamber stretched endlessly in all directions, a marvel of engineering that defied natural law. Crystalline walls curved upward into a dome that displayed the stars themselves, not as projections, but as actual windows into space bent through dimensional folding. 47 species had gathered here, representatives of every civilized world in known space, all focused on a single problem that had festered for 50 standard years. Ambassador Krelthor stood at his designated platform, his forearms gesturing with barely contained fury. His species, the Valorians, had ruled the military arm of the Galactic Council for 3 centuries. Their dark blue skin and ridge-lined faces marked them as warriors, and their reputation as the Council's enforcers was well earned through countless conflicts. Now, facing the assembled representatives, Krelthor's patience had finally broken. 50 years, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. 50 years since these humans made first contact. 50 years of watching them spread like infection across territories they have no right to claim. They ignore our boundaries, refuse our guidance, and show no respect for the order we have maintained for 10,000 years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The human question had dominated council sessions for months now. The newcomers had arrived with primitive vessels, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Yet within 5 decades, they had established colonies on 40 worlds. They mined asteroids in claimed systems, built stations in protected spaces, and responded to every council directive with polite refusal. Councillor Syrinx watched from her observation sphere, suspended above the main floor. Her species, the Mindari, were telepaths of considerable power, their translucent forms shifting with the emotional currents around them. Unlike the others, Syrinx felt something beneath the anger and frustration that filled the chamber. Something that made her uncomfortable in ways she could not articulate. High Arbiter Zeeks presided from the central throne, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. He was old, perhaps the oldest living being in council space. His species measured their lives in millennia, and Zeeks had witnessed the council's formation. He listened to Krelthor's complaints with the patience of ages. But even he seemed tired of the human problem. They mock us, Krelthor continued, pulling up holographic displays of human colonies. Look at their settlements. No defensive arrays, no military stations. They build farms and research facilities and homes as if this were their own private garden. When we send patrol fleets to investigate, they scatter like frightened children, yet still they refuse to acknowledge council authority. A representative from the Gentari Collective, an insectoid species known for their precision and logic, clicked its mandibles. The humans claim their expansion follows no established territories. They argue that empty space belongs to those who can use it. Empty because we designated it as buffer zones, Krelthor snapped. Empty because we understood the importance of controlled growth. These humans understand nothing. They breed too fast, spread too quickly, and refuse to learn their place in the natural order. Syrinx finally spoke, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Has anyone asked why they refuse? Has anyone sought to understand their perspective rather than simply demand compliance? Krelthor's 4 eyes fixed on her observation sphere. Understanding? They are children playing with technology they barely comprehend. There is nothing to understand except that they must be taught respect. Perhaps, Syrinx said carefully. But I sense something in their communications. Not fear, not defiance, but something else. Patience, perhaps. As if they are waiting for something. Then they will wait as subjects of council law, Krelthor declared. He turned back to the assembled representatives. I propose immediate enforcement action. We send a fleet to human space and deliver a final ultimatum. Submit to council, authority, or face the consequences. No more debates, no more delays. The vote proceeded with efficient formality. 43 species voted in favor of enforcement. 2 abstained. Only the Mindari and 1 other species voted against. The decision was clear and overwhelming. The Galactic Council, for the first time in 200 years, would deploy its military might to force compliance. Zix's voice resonated through the chamber like struck crystal. The decision is made. Ambassador Krelthor, you will command the enforcement fleet. 200 warships from 7 species. Proceed to human space and deliver our ultimatum. They will acknowledge Council sovereignty or face subjugation. Krelthor bowed with satisfaction. Finally, action, instead of endless talking. He had commanded fleets against the Scourge Rebellion, crushed the Outer Rim pirates, and brought a dozen defiant species into Council fold. The humans, with their tiny ships and scattered colonies, would learn the same lesson all eventually learned. The Council's authority was absolute. The fleet assembled over the following week at Rally Point Secundus, a massive military station on the edge of Council Core territory. Krelthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Valor's Hammer, and watched the vessels arrive. Dreadnoughts from the Valorian Armada, sleek destroyers from the Gentari Collective, heavy cruisers from 4 other species, all representing the finest military technology in known space. Each ship was a masterwork of warfare refined over centuries. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand sustained bombardment. Their crews were trained in tactics developed through countless conflicts. Together, they represented a force that no single species could possibly resist. Syrinx had been assigned as fleet observer, much to Krelthor's annoyance. She drifted through the flagship's corridors like a ghost, her presence unsettling to the warriors who prepared for battle. She had tried again to voice her concerns, but Krelthor dismissed them. Your species feels too much, he told her bluntly. You sense uncertainty where there is only simplicity. The humans will see our fleet and surrender. This will be resolved without firing a shot. I hope you are correct, Syrinx replied, though her form flickered with colors that indicated doubt. The message to Earth's diplomatic corps was formal and precise. It outlined humanity's violations, listed the Council's grievances, and delivered the ultimatum. Submit to Council authority within 48 hours or face military consequences. The fleet would jump to human territory and await response at coordinates of humanity's choosing. A gesture meant to show magnanimity, even in enforcement. The human response arrived 12 hours later. It was brief, almost casual in its tone. To the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. We have reviewed your ultimatum and the grievances listed therein. We respectfully decline to submit to conditions we believe are unjust and which we never agreed to follow. We recognize this response will be unsatisfactory to you. Therefore, we suggest you reconsider your approach. However, if you insist on a military demonstration, we propose meeting at the following coordinates. Please confirm your intent to proceed. Respectfully, Earth Diplomatic Corps. The message included spatial coordinates in deep space, far from any human colony or known installation. When Krelthor read the response aloud in the Fleet Command Center, the reaction was immediate laughter. Officers from multiple species found the human presumption hilarious. One warship commander, a grizzled Kartani veteran, actually had to sit down from amusement. They suggest we reconsider, Krelthor said, shaking his head. 200 of the finest warships ever constructed, and they suggest we reconsider. The arrogance is almost admirable. Perhaps they do not understand what they face, offered a Gentari tactical officer. Their largest observed vessel is barely 300 meters. They may not comprehend scale. Then they will learn, Krelthor said. He transmitted the confirmation. The fleet would proceed to the human coordinates and deliver the Council's judgment. Syrinx said nothing, but her form had turned the deep purple that indicated profound unease. She had reviewed every documented encounter with human vessels over the past 50 years. The pattern was there if one looked carefully. Humans always withdrew when Council ships approached. They avoided confrontation near their colonies. They seemed almost desperate to prevent any actual combat from occurring near civilian populations. The Council had interpreted this as cowardice. Syrinx was beginning to suspect it was something else entirely. The fleet jumped to slipspace, crossing vast distances in the compressed reality that allowed faster-than-light travel. They emerged at the coordinates humanity had provided. A region of empty space between stellar systems. Sensors swept the area and found nothing. No human ships, no stations, no mines or defensive platforms. Just empty void. Typical, Krelthor muttered. They lose courage when faced with actual consequences. Hours passed. The fleet maintained formation. A display of overwhelming force arranged in perfect military precision. Crew members began to relax. Convinced the humans had simply fled, some even suggested declaring victory and returning to Council space. Sciorix remained on the observation deck, staring into the darkness. She could feel something building, a tension in the fabric of space itself that her sensitive mind detected long before the instruments registered any change. "Ambassador," she said quietly into her communicator. "Something is coming." "Your nervousness is noted," Krelthor replied dismissively. "But there is nothing on sensors. The humans have." The tactical officer's voice cut through the channel, sharp with sudden alarm. "Contact. Energy spike. Massive displacement signature. Something is entering normal space." Krelthor was at the tactical display in seconds. The readings made no sense. The energy signature was larger than anything in their database. The spatial distortion off every scale they had for measuring such things. Space itself was tearing open. Reality bending around something enormous. "All ships to combat readiness," Krelthor ordered. "Weapons hot. Shields maximum. Prepare for." The Titan emerged. It came through the rupture in space, like a mountain pushing through reality. 20 kilometers of human engineering. A vessel so massive that the Council fleet looked like toys scattered in its shadow. The Indomitable was not elegant like Council ships, not refined or artistic. It was brutal functionality made manifest. Every surface covered with weapons, emplacements, sensor arrays, and armor plating that suggested it was built to endure unimaginable punishment. The Bridge of Valor's hammer fell completely silent. Every warrior, every officer, every crew member stared at the displays, showing the impossible vessel that had just arrived. Their entire fleet, 200 of the most powerful warships in known space, could fit inside the Titan's docking bays with room to spare. Krelthor's voice, when he finally found it, was barely a whisper. "What have they built?" The Indomitable's running lights came online, illuminating the darkness with the cold glow of a vessel that had no need to hide. Communication channels opened, and a human voice filled the Council fleet's bridge, calm and professional. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable. You requested a military response to your ultimatum. Here we are. We are ready to discuss terms, or if you prefer, we can demonstrate why we built ships of this class. The choice, Ambassador Krelthor, is yours." The Council fleet hung in space, surrounded by the stars, dwarfed by the single vessel humanity had sent to meet their enforcement action. And in that moment, every assumption they had made about the humans shattered like crystal struck by a hammer. The tactical display on Valor's hammer showed a nightmare scenario that no amount of training had prepared them for. 200 Council warships, arranged in their perfect battle formation, looked like insects surrounding a sleeping giant. The Indomitable simply existed in their midst. Not moving, not threatening, just present in a way that redefined every understanding of scale they possessed. Admiral Krelthor stood frozen at his command station. His 4 arms, usually gesturing with confidence and authority, hung motionless at his sides. Around him, bridge officers from 3 different species worked frantically at their stations, trying to make sense of the readings their instruments provided. "Confirm vessel displacement," Krelthor said, his voice tight. The sensor officer, a young Valorian who had never seen actual combat, stammered through his report. 20.3 kilometers from bow to stern. Mass readings are fluctuating, but estimates suggest approximately 4 billion tons. Energy signature is stable at levels that exceed our entire fleet's combined output by a factor of 12. "Weapons count?" Krelthor asked, still scanning. We have identified over 3,000 individual weapon emplacements on the visible surfaces alone. Point defense grid density suggests the vessel can engage thousands of simultaneous targets. Main weapons appear to be mounted along the forward sections. We cannot determine their yield without active scanning, and I would advise against any action they might interpret as targeting. Krelthor felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine. He had fought in the Scourge Wars, faced fleets that outnumbered his own, stared down weapons that could shatter moons. He had never felt fear. Now, looking at the human Tangent-class vessel, he understood what his prey had felt all those times before. The realization was deeply unpleasant. Counselor Syrinx materialized beside him, her translucent form glowing with colors he had never seen her display. "They have been hiding this," she said softly. "All this time, while we thought them weak, they were protecting something. Protecting us from knowing what they truly possessed." "Why?" Krelthor asked. "If they had this capability, why endure 50 years of our demands, our boundaries, our restrictions?" "Perhaps," Syrinx suggested, "they were hoping to avoid exactly this moment. Perhaps they wanted to find another way." Captain Chen's voice came through the communication channel again. "Ambassador Krelthor, I understand you need time to process this situation. Take the time you need. We are not here to rush you into decisions. However, I should inform you that my crew has been at battle stations for 6 hours now. We would appreciate a response within the next standard hour, so we can stand down if this will be resolved peacefully." Krelthor activated his response channel, trying to inject authority into his voice. "Captain Chen, this vessel, this is only one ship. You face 200 of the Council's finest warships. Regardless of your size, you cannot possibly believe you can prevail against such numbers." There was a pause before Chen responded, and Krelthor imagined he could hear amusement in her voice. "Ambassador, I appreciate your position. You are thinking tactically, which is appropriate for a military commander. However, I would ask you to consider why humanity would send a single vessel to meet your entire fleet if we were not confident in our capabilities. Size, as I am sure you know, is only one factor in warfare." "Then you intend to fight?" Krelthor demanded. "I intend to defend human sovereignty," Chen replied calmly. "If that requires combat, then we will engage. However, I would prefer to avoid unnecessary loss of life on both sides. Allow me to provide some context that may inform your decision." On the tactical display, information began streaming from the Indomitable. Historical data, engagement records, technological specifications. Krelthor watched as the display showed every encounter between human vessels and Council ships over the past 50 years. The pattern Syrinx had mentioned became obvious when presented this way. "You see the withdrawals," Chen's voice explained. "Every time our vessels encountered Council ships, we retreated. Your commanders interpreted this as fear or weakness. It was neither. It was deliberate policy. We were under strict orders to avoid any engagement that might occur near civilian populations, or that might reveal our full capabilities before we were ready to establish ourselves as an independent power." "Deception," Krelthor said coldly. "Prudence," Chen corrected. "Ambassador, humanity's first contact with Council space occurred when we were barely capable of interstellar travel. We had one colony world beyond Earth and ships that could barely exceed light speed. We encountered the Council at our most vulnerable moment in history. If we had revealed weakness, we would have been conquered or absorbed. If we had revealed strength too early, we would have been perceived as a threat and destroyed. So you hid your true nature while expanding aggressively into our space," Krelthor said. "We colonized uninhabited worlds in unclaimed territories," Chen replied, her voice taking on an edge for the first time. "We built on planets that had been empty for millions of years, used resources no one else was extracting, and asked only to be left alone to develop in our own way. Every attempt to communicate peacefully was met with demands for submission. Every offer of cooperation was rejected unless we agreed to become subjects rather than equals. Krelthor wanted to argue, but the truth of Chen's words resonated uncomfortably. He had reviewed the diplomatic records himself. Human proposals had been dismissed without serious consideration, their requests for mutual recognition ignored. The Council had assumed their submission was inevitable, and acted accordingly. Your point is made, Krelthor said. But this does not change our current situation. You have revealed your capability now. What happens next? That depends on you, Chen said. I have my orders, Ambassador. If your fleet fires on this vessel, we will defend ourselves. I am authorized to demonstrate our capabilities if necessary. However, I am also authorized to offer an alternative. Stand down, return to Council space, and report what you have seen. Let the Council make an informed decision about how to proceed with humanity, now that you understand what we truly are. You expect us to simply withdraw? Krelthor asked incredulously. I expect you to make the choice that preserves the most lives, Chen replied. But I recognize that your honor and your mission may require a demonstration. If that is the case, I offer you one chance to reconsider before we begin. Krelthor looked around his bridge. Every face showed the same uncertainty he felt. They had come expecting to intimidate primitives. They had found something that defied every assumption they possessed. Pride warred with pragmatism in his mind. To withdraw, without engaging, would be humiliation. But to engage might be suicide. No, he said finally, his decision made by a lifetime of military conditioning. We will not withdraw. We represent the Galactic Council. We do not flee from threats, regardless of size. Power your weapons, Captain Chen. Let us see if your vessel lives up to its appearance. Cyrix's form flashed bright red. Ambassador, please reconsider. There is no shame in... Enough, Krelthor snapped. He opened fleet-wide communications. All ships. This is Admiral Krelthor. Prepare to engage the human vessel. Target weapons and propulsion systems. Firing pattern Delta 7. We will cripple this ship and force their surrender. On my mark. The Council fleet responded with military precision. 200 warships oriented toward the Indomitable. Their weapons charging. Their shields reaching maximum strength. On every bridge, crews prepared for battle with the confidence born from centuries of dominance. Chen's voice came through one final time. I am sorry it has come to this, Ambassador. For what it's worth, I respect your courage. But courage and wisdom are not always the same thing. Indomitable, defensive posture. Demonstrate point defense capability only. Do not return lethal fire unless I give explicit authorization. Understood, Captain, another voice responded from the Indomitable. Point defense grids active. Fighter deployment authorized. Authorized, Chen confirmed. Launch all wings. Krelthor barely had time to process the words before the Titan's hull erupted with activity. Hundreds of launch bays opened simultaneously, and from them poured a swarm that made his blood run cold. 500 autonomous strike craft, each one moving with impossible agility, spread into formation around the Indomitable like a cloud of predatory insects. All ships, fire, Krelthor ordered. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, plasma torpedoes, kinetic rounds. Enough firepower to destroy a moon converged on the single human vessel from 200 different angles. None of it reached the hull. The Indomitable's point defense system activated with precision that seemed almost casual. Thousands of small weapons tracked thousands of incoming projectiles simultaneously. Energy beams were intercepted by defensive lasers. Missiles exploded harmlessly as proximity charges detonated them at safe distances. Kinetic rounds were vaporized by plasma bursts. The space around the Titan lit up with explosions and energy discharges, but the vessel itself remained untouched. How? The weapons officer breathed. That's not possible. That many simultaneous calculations. That many targeting solutions. They have computational power we cannot match, Sirix said quietly. Or, perhaps they are using technologies we do not yet understand. The human strike craft reached the Council fleet's perimeter. Krelthor expected them to open fire with heavy weapons. Instead, they wove through the formation with surgical precision, targeting specific systems on specific ships. The Valor's hammer shuddered as something struck their port engine array. "Damage report," Krelthor barked. "Engine 3 is offline." They hit it with an electromagnetic pulse weapon. "No permanent damage, but we have lost thrust capacity." Similar reports coming in from the entire fleet. They are systematically disabling our engines and weapons without destroying anything. Across the fleet, the same scenario played out on every ship. Human fighters moved too fast for point defense systems to track effectively. They struck with weapons designed to disable rather than destroy, removing the Council's capability to fight without killing anyone. Within 10 minutes, half the fleet was dead in space, powerless and weaponless but completely intact. Krelthor watched his perfect battle formation disintegrate into chaos. Ships collided with each other as disabled vessels drifted. Commanders shouted contradictory orders. The disciplined military force had become a confused mob in less time than it took to drink a cup of water. "Cease fire," he said quietly. "Sir?" his tactical officer asked. "I said, cease fire." Krelthor roared. "All ships, stop shooting. We have lost. We lost the moment that monster appeared in our midst." The Council fleet fell silent. The human strike craft pulled back immediately, returning to defensive formations around the Indomitable. Chen's voice came through the communication channel, still calm, still professional. "Ambassador Krelthor, thank you for ordering the ceasefire. I am pleased we could resolve this without loss of life. My engineering teams are standing by to assist with repairs to your vessels. We can have your fleet operational again within 2 standard hours." Krelthor slumped in his command chair, feeling every one of his 60 years of service weighing on him. "Captain Chen, you have made your point. We are at your mercy." "No, Ambassador," Chen replied, and now there was warmth in her voice. "You are not at our mercy. You are our guests, and we treat guests with respect. I would like to invite you and Counselor Sirix aboard the Indomitable. There are things you need to see, things you need to understand. The Council sent you here, believing they understood humanity. They were wrong. Let me show you why we built these ships. Let me show you what we are really afraid of." 17. 2000 Rive. Krelthor exchanged glances with Sirix. Her form had shifted to a soft blue, the color of curiosity and hope. He realized, with some surprise, that despite being defeated, he did not feel humiliated. He felt something stranger. Respect. "Very well, Captain Chen," he said. "We accept your invitation." "Very well." Unround. The transport shuttle that retrieved Krelthor and Sirix from the Valor's hammer was itself larger than some Council patrol vessels. It moved through the debris field created by disabled ships with careful precision, its pilot clearly skilled despite the size of the craft. Through the viewport, Krelthor watched his fleet floating helplessly in space, engineering teams from the Indomitable already moving between vessels to assist with repairs. True to Chen's word, they were being treated as guests rather than defeated enemies. Human technicians worked alongside Council engineers, sharing technical knowledge freely, even offering upgrades to systems they noticed were outdated. The gesture was calculated, Krelthor knew, but no less effective for being intentional. The shuttle approached the Indomitable from its port side, giving them a perspective on the vessel's true scale that the tactical displays had failed to convey. Up close, the Titangent class looked less like a ship and more like a mobile city. Whole sections seemed dedicated to purposes Krelthor could not identify from external observation alone. "They built this in secret," Sirix murmured beside him. "For 50 years. While we watched their colonies and tracked their mining operations, they were constructing something like this." "Not just this," Krelthor replied grimly. Chen said, "Ships of this class. Plural. This is not their only Titan. The shuttle entered a docking bay that could have accommodated Krell Thor's entire flagship. Human crew members moved about their duties with practiced efficiency, not bothering to stare at the alien visitors. Krell Thor found this both impressive and slightly insulting. His species commanded respect through physical presence alone, yet these humans barely glanced in his direction. Captain Sarah Chen waited at the bay entrance, flanked by 2 officers who carried no visible weapons. She was smaller than Krell Thor had expected, like most humans, but she stood with the confidence of someone who commanded overwhelming force. Her uniform was simple and practical, marked only with insignia indicating her rank and ship assignment. Ambassador Krell Thor, Counselor Sirix, welcome aboard the Indomitable, Chen said, offering a human gesture of greeting that Krell Thor had learned meant extending an empty hand. He touched his own hand to hers briefly, noting her grip was firm without being aggressive. Captain Chen, Krell Thor acknowledged. I confess I am curious why you invited us here, rather than simply sending us back to Council space with our defeat fresh in mind. Because defeating you was never the goal, Chen replied. Come. Please. There is much to show you. And I suspect you have many questions. She led them through corridors that seemed deliberately oversized, as if the ship had been designed to accommodate beings much larger than humans. The walls were lined with information displays showing ship status, crew assignments, and data streams Krell Thor could not immediately interpret. Human crew members passed them in both directions, all offering brief nods of acknowledgement to their captain. Your ship is efficiently organized, Sirix observed. The crew seems disciplined, but not fearful. We train extensively, Chen said. Life on a Titangent class requires different skills than smaller vessels. We have a crew complement of 12,000, not including the fighter pilots and support personnel. Everyone knows their role, and everyone understands what this ship represents. And what does it represent? Krell Thor asked. Chen stopped at a large window overlooking one of the ship's internal hangars. Below them, dozens of strike craft were being serviced and rearmed, their sleek forms maintained by both human technicians and automated systems. Protection, Chen said simply. This ship represents humanity's commitment to protecting what we have built and what we value. But perhaps not in the way you think. She resumed walking, leading them deeper into the vessel. They passed through sections that clearly served as living quarters, recreational facilities, even what appeared to be gardens growing under artificial sunlight. The Indomitable was not just a warship, it was a home for thousands of people who might spend years at a time aboard. Finally, Chen brought them to a large chamber that took Krell Thor's breath away. The room was spherical, with walkways crossing through its center and massive holographic displays floating in the air. Human personnel worked at stations around the perimeter, monitoring data streams that seemed to come from thousands of sources simultaneously. This is our Strategic Operations Center, Chen explained. The brain of the Indomitable. From here, we coordinate sensor data from across an entire stellar sector. We track ship movements, analyze gravitational anomalies, monitor communications across thousands of frequencies, and synthesize it all into actionable intelligence. Impressive, Krell Thor admitted. But this seems excessive for territorial defense. It would be, Chen agreed. If territorial defense was our primary mission, she gestured, and the holographic displays shifted. The familiar map of Council space appeared, showing the territories of 47 species spread across thousands of systems. Then the view pulled back, showing the larger galactic structure, the spiral arms and the dark spaces between them. And beyond the edge of known space, markers began appearing in the void. 14 years ago, Chen said, her voice taking on a somber tone, our deep space exploration vessel Magellan detected an anomaly approximately 40,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. Energy readings that did not match any known natural phenomenon or any technology in our databases. We assumed it was some kind of stellar event we had not encountered before. The markers on the display multiplied, spreading across the void beyond the galaxy's edge. Over the next 5 years, we detected more of these anomalies. Always beyond the rim, always moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than random occurrence. We built better sensors, sent more exploration vessels, tried to determine what we were seeing. The answer, when we finally accepted it, changed everything. The display zoomed in on one of the markers, and Krelthor felt his skin go cold. The image showed something vast and organic-looking, with structures that suggested technology, but in configurations that followed no logic he understood. The energy signature was enormous, dwarfing even the Indomitable. "There is something out there," Chen said quietly. "Something that does not match any known species in Council records or human history. Something big enough and powerful enough that when we finally understood what we were looking at, we had to make a choice. Tell the Council and risk galactic panic, or prepare ourselves to face it alone if necessary." Syrinx drifted closer to the display, her form shifting through colors that indicated shock and fear. "How many?" she asked. "We have identified 17 distinct signatures," Chen replied. "Each one comparable in size to the Indomitable, or larger. They are heading toward galactic space. Current projections, based on their observed speed and trajectory, suggest they will reach the outer rim in approximately 15 to 20 years. Why did you not tell us?" Krelthor demanded. "If this threat exists, the Council should have been informed immediately." Chen turned to face him directly. "Ambassador, be honest with yourself. What would the Council have done if humanity, barely 50 years after first contact, had claimed to detect a massive threat that no Council species had observed? Would you have believed us? Or would you have dismissed it as a fabrication designed to justify our military buildup?" Krelthor wanted to argue, but he knew the truth. The Council would have laughed at such claims from the newcomers. They might have even used it as justification for immediate conquest, claiming humans were spreading dangerous paranoia. "So we made another choice," Chen continued. "We decided to establish ourselves as a power that could not be ignored or dismissed. We colonized aggressively. To create resource bases, we avoided military confrontation to keep our capabilities classified. And we built the Titans." She gestured again, and the display showed 5 massive vessels stationed at different points in space, forming a rough perimeter around the entire galactic rim that faced the approaching anomalies. 5 Titangent-class vessels, Chen said. The Indomitable, the Perseverance, the Defiance, the Endurance, and the Vigilance. Each one positioned to monitor a different sector of deep space. Each one capable of independent operation for up to 5 years. Each one designed not to fight the Council, but to serve as the first line of defense against whatever is coming. "You built all of this in secret," Syrinx said, amazement in her voice. 5 vessels of this scale, without any other species noticing. We built them in deep space, in systems far from trade routes, Chen explained. We mined resources from uninhabited asteroid fields, manufactured components in automated facilities, assembled the vessels in locations we kept carefully classified. It required enormous resources and coordination, but humanity has experience with massive construction projects. We built cities that housed millions. We terraformed hostile worlds. We learned how to accomplish the impossible through determination and cooperation. Krelthor stared at the tactical display, his mind struggling to process the implications. Everything the Council had assumed about humanity was wrong. Their aggressive expansion was not conquest, but preparation. Their refusal to submit was not arrogance, but necessity. Their military secrecy was not deception, but protection. "You said these anomalies will arrive in 15 to 20 years, he said slowly. "What do you know about them? What are they?" "Honestly, we do not know," Chen admitted. "We have attempted communication across every frequency we can generate. We have sent probe vessels to intercept their projected paths. But the probes were destroyed before they could gather significant data. We do not know if these are ships, weapons, or living beings. We do not know if they are hostile, curious, or simply unaware of our existence. But you assume they are a threat," Krelthor said. "We prepare for the possibility," Chen corrected. "Ambassador, Humanity's history taught us a painful lesson. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, destroying our own kind over resources and ideology. We nearly rendered our homeworld uninhabitable, and then we finally learned to look outward instead of inward, to unite against external challenges rather than internal divisions. When we detected these anomalies, we remembered that lesson. She walked to the window overlooking the operations center. The Titans were not built to conquer the Council. They were built to defend it. Every species in galactic space, whether they know it or not, is currently protected by the sensors aboard these 5 vessels. If something hostile approaches, we will know, and we will respond. Why tell us this now? Cyrix asked. You could have simply defeated our fleet and sent us away. Why reveal your true purpose? Tell us time, because the time for secrets is ending, Chen said. In 15 years, maybe 20 if we are lucky, something is going to arrive at the galactic rim. When it does, humanity cannot face it alone. The Council cannot face it without knowing it exists. We need unity, cooperation, and combined strength. That requires trust, and trust requires truth. She turned back to face them. I invited you aboard to show you what we have been preparing for. Not to threaten you or demand your submission, but to offer partnership. Humanity wants a seat at the Council as an equal power. We want to share our sensor data, our defensive strategies, and yes, our Titangent class technology. But we will not beg. We will not submit to subjugation. We will stand as equals, or we will stand alone. Krelthor was silent for a long moment. Everything he had believed about this mission had been shattered in the space of a few hours. He had come to enforce Council will on primitive upstarts. Instead, he had discovered that the upstarts were the only ones watching for dangers the Council had failed to detect. The Council will struggle to believe this, he said finally. Many will claim it is an elaborate deception. That is why we are giving you complete access to our sensor logs, Chen said. Every detection, every data point, every analysis. Take it all back to your Council. Let their own scientists verify what we have found. The truth will speak for itself. And if they still refuse to accept humanity as equals? Krelthor asked. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Then we will continue to do what we have done for the past 50 years. We will protect ourselves, prepare for what is coming, and hope that when the crisis arrives, old grudges will matter less than survival. But I believe the Council is capable of wisdom when properly informed. That is why I am trusting you with this knowledge. Cyrix moved closer to the tactical display, studying the approaching anomalies. Her form glowed with colors Krelthor had never seen. Emotions too complex for simple interpretation. I believe you, she said softly. I do not fully understand what I am seeing, but I believe you, and I will support your petition to the Council. As will I, Krelthor heard himself say, surprising himself with the words. But they felt right. The humans had defeated his fleet without killing anyone, shared their deepest secrets, and offered partnership despite having the power to demand submission. That deserved respect. Chen smiled, and for the first time since their arrival, Krelthor saw genuine warmth in the expression. Thank you, both of you. Your support will matter more than you know. Now, let me show you the rest of the Indomitable. If you are going to explain this to the Council, you should understand exactly what humanity has built and why. They spent the next several hours touring the massive vessel, seeing systems and technologies that the Council had never developed. Chen explained their approach to warfare, their emphasis on defensive capabilities over offensive dominance, their integration of automation and human decision-making. She showed them the living quarters where 12,000 humans made their lives, the research laboratories where scientists studied the approaching anomalies, the training centers where they prepared for confrontations no one hoped would come. By the time they returned to the shuttle, Krelthor felt like he had glimpsed a future he had not imagined possible. A future where the Council was not the pinnacle of civilization, but one part of something larger. A future where humanity stood not as subjects but as shields, protecting everyone behind defensive lines that had been quietly established while others looked away. As the shuttle carried them back to the Valor's Hammer, now fully repaired by human engineering teams, Cyrix spoke quietly beside him. "They are not warriors," she said. "Not like we understand the term. They are guardians." They saw a threat and responded not by seeking power, but by taking responsibility. "Yes," Krelthor agreed. "And we almost destroyed them because they refused to kneel." The Council has much to learn. Below them, the Indomitable hung in space, surrounded by the recovered Council fleet. The Titangent class looked less like a weapon now, and more like what Chen had described: protection made manifest. And somewhere beyond the stars, moving slowly but inevitably toward everything they knew, 17 massive unknowns continued their approach. The war, Krelthor realized, had not been with humanity. The real war had not yet begun. But now, at least, they knew it was coming, and they had found unexpected allies in the species they had come to conquer. The council chamber had never been this crowded. Word had spread that Ambassador Krelthor and Councillor Cyrix carried urgent news from their enforcement mission. Representatives from all 47 species had assembled, filling every platform and observation sphere. The anticipation in the air was thick enough to taste. High Arbiter Zeeks presided from his central throne, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into patterns that suggested impatience. The enforcement fleet had been gone for 3 weeks. They should have returned victorious, with humanity's submission secured and the Council's authority reinforced. Instead, they had sent a priority communication requesting an emergency full Council session. Krelthor stood at his platform, appearing diminished somehow despite his warrior's frame. His 4 arms, usually gesturing with aggressive confidence, moved with careful deliberation. Beside him, floating in her observation sphere, Cyrix glowed with colors that suggested urgency mixed with hope. "Ambassador Krelthor," Zeke's voice resonated through the chamber. "You commanded 200 warships on a mission of enforcement. You departed with the full authority of this council to secure humanity's submission. What is your report?" Krelthor took a breath, knowing that his next words would change the council forever. "High Arbiter, honored representatives, I stand before you to report that our mission was unsuccessful. The enforcement fleet engaged with human military forces and was defeated within minutes. Not a single council vessel was destroyed, but our capability to continue fighting was eliminated almost instantly. The humans demonstrated technological and tactical superiority that exceeded our projections by several orders of magnitude." The chamber erupted. Voices from dozens of species shouted questions, accusations, disbelief. How could 200 warships fail? What weapons did the humans possess? Was Krelthor incompetent, or had he betrayed them? The noise built to chaos until Zeeks struck his throne with a crystalline appendage, producing a tone that cut through every other sound. "Silence," the High Arbiter commanded. "Ambassador Krelthor has commanded fleets for 3 decades without a single defeat. If he reports failure, we will hear his full explanation before passing judgment. Continue, Ambassador." Krelthor activated the holographic display at his platform. The image of the Indomitable appeared, rotating slowly to show every angle of the massive vessel. The chamber fell silent again as representatives struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. "The humans met our enforcement fleet with a single vessel," Krelthor said. "A Titangent-class warship designated Indomitable. As you can see from the scale indicators, this ship is 20 kilometers in length and masses approximately 4 billion tons. It carries over 3,000 individual weapon emplacements, can deploy 500 autonomous strike craft, and possesses defensive systems that intercepted every weapon fired by our entire fleet simultaneously." "Impossible," someone shouted. "No ship that size could function. The power requirements alone would exceed any known reactor technology, and yet it exists," Krelthor replied calmly. I witnessed it myself. I boarded it. I walked its corridors and spoke with its crew. The humans have developed technologies we do not possess, applied them in ways we never considered, and constructed 5 such vessels in complete secrecy over the past 50 years. 5? The word rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Cyrix's voice cut through the confusion, her tone carrying the authority her species possessed when speaking truth that demanded acceptance. What Ambassador Krell Thor reports is accurate. I have reviewed every sensor log from every ship in the fleet. I have examined the data the humans provided. I have touched the minds of their crew members with their permission. Everything they claim is true. And there is more. Something far more important than their military capabilities. She activated her own display, and the image of the approaching anomalies appeared. The chamber's noise died completely as representatives stared at the massive, incomprehensible structures moving through the void beyond the galactic rim. The humans discovered these 14 years ago, Cyrix continued. 17 distinct energy signatures, each one comparable in size and power to their Titangent-class vessels. They are approaching galactic space from beyond the rim. Current projections suggest arrival in 15 to 20 years. The humans have been tracking them, studying them, and preparing defensive responses while we remained completely unaware. Why did they not inform us? Demanded the Gentari representative. If such a threat exists, they had an obligation to report it. They believed we would not listen, Krell said bluntly. And they were correct. If humanity had approached the Council 50 years ago, barely capable of interstellar travel, and claimed to have detected a massive external threat, would we have believed them? Or would we have dismissed it as fantasy or manipulation? The chamber's silence was answer enough. Krell continued, his voice carrying the weight of confession. The humans made a difficult choice. They chose to establish themselves as a power that could not be ignored or dismissed before revealing what they had discovered. Every action we interpreted as aggressive expansion or defiance was actually preparation. They colonized rapidly to establish resource bases for ship construction. They avoided military confrontation to keep their capabilities classified. They built the Titans not to conquer us, but to defend us from a threat we did not know existed. You ask us to simply accept this? Challenged a representative from the Korthani Dominion. To believe that these newcomers, who have ignored our authority for 50 years, are actually our protectors? This could be an elaborate deception, designed to gain council power through manufactured fear, which is why we brought this, Cyrix said. She transmitted data to every platform in the chamber simultaneously. Complete sensor logs from all 5 Titangent-class vessels, 14 years of observations, measurements, and analysis. Your own scientists can verify every data point. The humans have hidden nothing. They are offering complete transparency about what they have discovered and what they have prepared. For the next several hours, the council chamber transformed into something resembling a scientific conference. Species-specific science advisors were summoned to review the data. Arguments erupted between those who accepted the findings and those who sought alternative explanations. The Mindari confirmed Cyrix's telepathic impressions of sincerity. The Zentari praised the mathematical precision of the human sensor calibrations. The Valorians grudgingly acknowledged that the tactical preparations showed professional military thinking. Finally, as the evidence mounted beyond reasonable denial, the tone of the debate shifted. The question became not whether the threat existed, but what to do about it. The humans want a seat at this council, Krell said when the floor returned to him. They want recognition as a sovereign power with equal voice in galactic affairs. In exchange, they offer full access to their Titangent-class technology, integration of their sensor networks with our own, and cooperation in developing defensive strategies for the approaching crisis. They hold a weapon to our heads and demand equality, someone muttered. No, Krell said sharply. They hold a shield in front of our bodies and offer partnership. There is a difference, one I failed to recognize until I stood on the bridge of their vessel and understood what they had sacrificed to prepare for a threat we ignored. The ambassador is correct, Cyrix added. I have sensed the minds of the Indomitable's crew. They do not seek dominion. They seek cooperation. They are afraid, as they should be. And they understand that fear is best faced together. Zix had remained silent throughout the debates, his ancient mind processing information and implications. Now he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of council history. "I remember," he said, and the entire chamber stilled to hear him. 47 species fought each other for resources, territory, and dominance. War was constant. Entire worlds burned. Billions died. And then something came from beyond our space, something we did not understand, could not communicate with, and barely survived. It forced us to unite or perish. The council was born from necessity, from the understanding that together we were stronger than divided. He paused, and Krell saw emotions flicker through the crystalline structure of his body. Memories that predated every other living being in this chamber. The threat we faced then was eliminated, but at terrible cost. Civilizations fell. Knowledge was lost. We rebuilt over millennia, and we forgot the lesson that birthed us. We became comfortable in our dominance, assured in our superiority. We forgot that the universe is vast and we are small. The humans, it seems, have not forgotten this lesson. They look outward and see danger. They prepare for what might come. They remind me of what we once were, when we were young and humble and afraid. The chamber remained absolutely silent. No one interrupted when the High Arbiter spoke of the ancient past. "I support the human petition," Zix declared. "They have earned their place at this council, not through submission, but through demonstrated wisdom. They saw a threat and responded with preparation rather than panic. They possessed overwhelming force and chose restraint over conquest. These are the qualities we claim to value. We should recognize them when displayed by others." The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 39 species voted to accept humanity as a full council member. 6 voted against. 2 abstained. The humans had achieved in 3 weeks what they had failed to accomplish in 50 years. Krell felt something unfamiliar as he transmitted the results to Captain Chen aboard the Indomitable. Relief, mixed with hope. The universe was larger and more dangerous than the council had admitted. But now, at least, they would face it together. Chen's response was characteristically professional but warm. "Ambassador Krell, please convey our gratitude to the High Arbiter and all council representatives who supported our petition. Humanity looks forward to working with the council as partners in defense of all civilized space. We are transmitting technical specifications for Titangent-class systems now. Our shipyards are prepared to assist with council vessel upgrades. Together, we will be ready." The months that followed transformed the galactic political landscape. Human engineers worked alongside council specialists to upgrade defensive systems across the fleet. Titangent-class sensor technology was integrated into existing early warning networks, expanding detection ranges by factors of 10. Joint military exercises began, combining council tactical doctrine with human defensive strategies. Krell found himself assigned as primary liaison between council military forces and human fleet operations. He had requested the position, wanting to learn from the species that had so completely defeated him. Chen had welcomed him aboard the Indomitable, offering him permanent quarters and full access to their operations. He learned that humans approached warfare differently than any species he had encountered. They studied historical conflicts from their own past with obsessive detail, analyzing what worked and what failed across thousands of years of brutal experience. They emphasized adaptability over rigid doctrine, encouraged creative problem-solving at every level of command, and trained their personnel to function independently when necessary. "We learned through failure," Chen explained during one of their many conversations on the Indomitable's observation deck. "Our ancestors made every mistake possible. They fought wars that lasted generations, developed weapons that nearly destroyed their own civilization, created divisions that seemed permanent. But eventually, we learned. We realized that our real enemies were not each other, but ignorance, scarcity, and external threats. We were too busy fighting ourselves to notice. The Council believes it learned these lessons millennia ago, Krelthor said. Perhaps, Chen agreed. But comfort breeds complacency. You built a stable civilization, which is admirable, but stability can become stagnation. You stopped looking outward because you believed you had seen everything worth seeing. We are still new enough to space to remember that assumption is dangerous. 6 months after the Council vote, the 5 Tangent-class vessels formed the core of an integrated defense network that spanned the entire galactic rim facing the approaching anomalies. Council dreadnoughts positioned themselves in support formations, their upgraded systems linked to human command centers. Supply lines were established. Communication protocols were standardized. Training exercises brought crews from dozens of species together in coordinated defensive drills. Syrinx visited the Indomitable frequently, her telepathic abilities proving invaluable for facilitating cross-species communication. She spent hours in the Strategic Operations Center, helping human and Council personnel understand each other's perspectives and resolve conflicts before they could escalate. You have changed us, she told Chen during one visit. Not through conquest, but through example. The Council was becoming insular, focused on maintaining power rather than serving purpose. Humanity reminded us that we exist to protect and preserve, not merely to rule. We reminded ourselves of the same thing, Chen replied. When we detected those anomalies, we could have retreated to Earth and fortified our home system. Let the galaxy face its own problems. But we are part of this galaxy now. Whether the Council acknowledged it or not, we had a responsibility to act. In the Strategic Operations Center, the displays continued to track the 17 massive unknowns as they crawled across the void. Still distant, still mysterious, but closer every day. The energy signatures remained incomprehensible. Attempts at communication continued to produce no response. Probe vessels sent to intercept were destroyed without any indication of whether the destruction was intentional or incidental. Krelthor stood beside Chen, watching the displays and thinking about the future. The Council had spent 50 years trying to force humanity into submission. Humanity had spent those same 50 years preparing to defend everything the Council represented. The irony was not lost on him. Do you think we will be ready when they arrive? He asked. Chen was quiet for a moment before responding. I think we will be more ready than we would have been if we had faced this separately. Whether that is enough. She shrugged. A human gesture, Krelthor had learned, meant uncertainty. We will find out together. On the display, the 5 Titans held their positions, surrounded by Council fleets that grew larger every month as more species contributed vessels to the defensive effort. The chamber fell silent, not with fear but with determination. Whatever was coming, they would face it as one united force. And far below, in the Council chamber that had witnessed humanity's acceptance, High Arbiter Zix watched the same displays and remembered another time when the galaxy had united against the unknown. History, he thought, had a way of repeating its lessons for those too proud to learn them the first time. The humans, young and brash and presumptuous, had forced the Council to remember. For that, whatever else came, he was grateful. 15 months had passed since humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council. The transformation of galactic defense infrastructure had proceeded faster than anyone had projected. T-Tangent-class technology had been adapted for Council manufacturing, and 3 new joint construction vessels were under development in shipyards orbiting the Gentari homeworld. The integration of human and Council forces had created a military structure more capable than anything that had existed before. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, reviewing status reports from across the defensive network. The view before her showed a carefully orchestrated pattern of vessels stretched across thousands of cubic light-years. Human Titans served as command centers, their massive sensor arrays feeding data to hundreds of Council warships positioned in strategic formations. Krell entered the deck behind her, his footsteps deliberately loud enough to announce his presence. Chen had learned that Valorians considered silent approaches to be either predatory or disrespectful, depending on context. She appreciated his consistent courtesy. "Status update from the perimeter fleets," Krell said, moving to stand beside her. "All vessels are reporting full operational capacity. The joint exercises completed yesterday showed coordination times have improved by another 12%. Your people and mine are learning to work together effectively. Necessity is a powerful teacher," Chen observed. "How are the council representatives adapting to integrated command structures?" "Better than expected," Krell admitted. "There was initial resistance to taking orders from human commanders, but performance speaks louder than pride. The tactical innovations your officers introduce during exercises consistently outperform traditional approaches. Even the most stubborn species are beginning to recognize the value." Chen smiled slightly. Translation: They hate admitting we know what we are doing, but they hate losing exercises more. Essentially, yes. Krell agreed, his expression showing what she had learned to recognize as Valorian amusement. Though, I would phrase it more diplomatically in official reports. They watched the displays together, in comfortable silence. Their relationship had evolved from defeated adversary and victor to something approaching genuine friendship. Chen found Krell perspective valuable, his military experience providing insights that complemented her own strategic thinking. He, in turn, had confessed that working with humans challenged assumptions he had held for his entire career. A priority alert flashed across Chen's neural interface. She straightened immediately, her relaxed posture shifting to full attention. "We have movement. The anomalies just changed trajectory." Krell forearms tensed, his warrior reflexes responding to the tone in her voice. "Changed how?" Chen pulled up the tactical display, enlarging it to show the trajectory projections. For 14 years, the 17 massive unknowns had maintained perfectly consistent courses and speeds. Now, suddenly, they had altered their paths. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. "They are converging," Chen said quietly. Previous projections showed them arriving at different points along the rim over a span of 3 years. New projections show them arriving at a single location within 6 months of each other. That is intentional coordination. They are aware of each other, Krell realized, potentially communicating or operating under unified command, which means they are intelligent and organized. Chen agreed. Not natural phenomena. Not mindless drones. Whatever we are facing, it thinks and plans. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All vessels. This is Captain Chen. Priority alert. The anomalies have altered course toward convergent trajectories. All Titangent class commanders report to Secure Channel Alpha for strategic assessment. Council fleet commanders maintain current positions but prepare for potential redeployment. This is not a drill. Across the defensive network, vessels responded immediately. Training exercises halted. Crews moved to combat readiness. Sensor arrays refocused on the approaching unknowns, gathering every possible data point about the course changes. Within 20 minutes, Chen stood in the Indomitable's Strategic Operations Center, with the 4 other Titangent-class captains appearing via holographic projection. Krell stood beside her, representing Council Military Command. Cyrix had materialized in her observation sphere, her telepathic presence adding another dimension to their collective assessment. Trajectory analysis shows convergence at these coordinates. Chen displayed the location on the main tactical screen. Deep space, approximately 200 light-years beyond the current rim positions. They will arrive in approximately 14 standard years if they maintain current speed. Why converge? Asked Captain James Martinez of the Perseverance. If their goal is to enter galactic space, spreading their approach would make more tactical sense. Convergence creates a single defensive focal point for us. Unless they want us to concentrate our forces, suggested Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Vigilance. Draw us to a single location, while something else approaches from a different vector. We have full sensor coverage across the entire rim facing their approach, Chen countered. Nothing else is out there. These 17 signatures are all we have detected in 14 years of continuous monitoring. Then perhaps they converge, because they need to, Sirix offered. Perhaps whatever they intend requires combined capability. Or, perhaps they converge for mutual protection, because they have detected us as well. That thought silenced the group for a moment. The assumption had always been that the anomalies were approaching galactic space without awareness of its inhabitants. But if they had detected the Titans, if they knew they were being watched and prepared for, their behavior might reflect tactical adaptation. We need more information, Chen said. Captain Rodriguez, the Endurance is closest to their convergence point. Can you deploy probe vessels with better sensor packages? Captain Maria Rodriguez of the Endurance nodded. We have been refining probe designs based on previous failures. New models have better stealth characteristics and more resilient communication systems. I can launch within 6 hours. Do it, Chen authorized. Maximum stealth approach. Priority is gathering data on their propulsion systems, energy signatures, and any communication emissions. If they destroy the probes, we want to learn something from how they accomplish it. The meeting continued for another hour, reviewing contingency plans and redeployment options. By the time it concluded, Chen felt the weight of responsibility more heavily than ever. 14 years of preparation might not be enough. They were facing something that could adapt, coordinate, and potentially strategize. The probe launch from the Endurance proceeded smoothly. 6 advanced reconnaissance vessels, each one incorporating the best stealth technology human and council engineers could design, began their long journey toward the convergence point. They moved on efficient courses, conserving fuel for maximum range, their minimal signatures designed to avoid detection. For 3 weeks, the probes transmitted normal telemetry. They passed the boundary where previous probes had been destroyed, continuing deeper into the void beyond the rim. Excitement built across the defensive network. Perhaps the new designs were successful. Perhaps they would finally get clear data about what they faced. Then, one by one, the probes went silent. Not destroyed in the violent manner of previous attempts, but simply ceasing transmission. One moment they were functioning normally. The next, they were gone. No explosion, no energy discharge, no indication of what had happened. They are being captured, Sirix said when she reviewed the data. Not destroyed, but taken. Something is reaching out, pulling them in, examining them, which means they want to learn about us too, Krelthor observed. They are conducting reconnaissance, just as we are. Chen considered the implications. If they are studying our probes, they are learning about our technology level. They will know we are aware of them. They will know we are preparing. Is that necessarily bad? Asked Martinez via communication link. Perhaps it opens possibilities for communication. If they are curious about us, they might be willing to talk rather than fight. Or they might be assessing our threat level to determine how much force they need to apply, Rodriguez countered. We cannot assume curiosity equals peaceful intent. The debate that followed spread throughout the defensive network and back to the council chamber itself. Some argued for increasing defensive preparations, assuming hostile intent. Others suggested attempting more sophisticated communication efforts, trying to establish dialogue before the anomalies arrived. A few voices even suggested withdrawal, pulling forces back to more defensible positions, deeper in galactic space. Chen listened to all perspectives but kept returning to a fundamental reality. They had 14 years to prepare, and they could not afford to guess wrong about the nature of the threat. Insufficient preparation could mean extinction. Excessive militarization might turn a potential peaceful contact into a conflict. The balance between readiness and restraint had never been more critical. She called for a council session to address the situation directly. This time, she would speak not as a petitioner requesting admission, but as an equal member proposing a strategy that all species had voice in shaping. The council chamber received her with respect that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. Representatives listened attentively as she presented the updated data, the probe results, and the strategic implications of the convergence. We face a decision point, Chen concluded. We can assume hostile intent and maximize military readiness. We can assume peaceful intent and focus on communication efforts, or we can prepare for both possibilities simultaneously. I recommend the third option. We continue defensive preparations, while also attempting more sophisticated contact methods. We stay ready to fight while hoping to talk. High Arbiter Zix spoke from his central throne. Captain Chen proposes the path of wisdom. Prepare for the worst while working toward the best. This is how the Council operated in our earliest days, when we faced the unknown that birthed our unity. I support this approach. The vote was not unanimous but showed strong majority support. Resources would be allocated to both enhanced defensive capabilities and advanced communication attempts. Human linguists would work with Council xenopsychologists to develop contact protocols. Military forces would continue training, while scientists prepared messages that might bridge the gap between civilizations. The months became years. The defensive network grew stronger and more integrated. New vessels joined the perimeter fleets. Weapons systems were upgraded. Tactical doctrines were refined through endless exercises. But simultaneously, massive communication arrays were constructed, designed to broadcast across every known frequency in patterns that mathematical models suggested might indicate intelligence to vastly different minds. Krell Thor remained aboard the Indomitable, his role evolving from liaison to genuine partner in command. Chen watched him adapt to human military culture, surprised at his willingness to question assumptions that his species had held for centuries. He learned to value flexibility over rigid doctrine, to trust subordinates with decision-making authority, to see warfare as a last resort rather than a first response. You have changed, she told him during one of their frequent strategy sessions. The warrior who came to enforce council will is not the leader you have become. Quote, Krell considered her words carefully. I learned something from losing to you, he said finally. I learned that strength without wisdom is merely violence. That victory without purpose is empty. The humans defeated my fleet without killing anyone, shared their knowledge when they could have kept it secret, and offered partnership when they could have demanded submission. That is strength I had never witnessed before. It changed my understanding of what power should be. We learned from our mistakes, Chen said. Thousands of years of making the wrong choices taught us, eventually, to make better ones. We are still learning, as are we all. Krell agreed. The Council has existed for 10,000 years. Yet in 2 years humanity has taught us more about defense and cooperation than we learned in millennia. Perhaps newcomers see clearly because they have not yet developed the blind spots of ancient success. 10 years after the convergence became apparent, the 17 anomalies were close enough for detailed sensor analysis. The data that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. The structures were biological and technological simultaneously, living ships or machine organisms that defied easy classification. They moved through space using propulsion systems that seemed to manipulate gravity itself. Their energy signatures suggested power generation on scales that dwarfed even the Titans. But most significantly, they were definitely aware of the defensive network arrayed to meet them. The sensor sweeps were obvious. Active scanning that examined the Titan positions, the Council fleet formations, even the communication arrays. Whatever intelligence guided these 17 massive presences, it was studying the galaxy's defenders with clear intent. They know we are here, Chen said, watching the sensor reports with Krell beside her. They know we are watching them. They know we are ready. And they are still coming. Then we will be here when they arrive. Krell replied. Together, united, ready for whatever they bring. The final 4 years passed in intense preparation. 3 new Titangent-class vessels, built through Joint Council human construction, joined the defensive network. The perimeter fleet grew to over 800 vessels, representing every major species in galactic space. Training exercises achieved coordination levels that military theorists had thought impossible between such diverse cultures, and still the 17 approached. Slowly, steadily, converging toward the coordinates that would bring them to the very edge of galactic space. On the day they were projected to arrive, Chen stood on the Indomitable's observation deck with Krelthor, Syrinx, and representatives from a dozen species. The view before them showed the most concentrated military force in galactic history, all focused on a single point in space where something vast and unknown would soon emerge from the void. "Whatever happens today," Chen said quietly, "we face it together. Not as humans and council. Not as separate species pursuing separate interests, but as one civilization defending our shared home." "Agreed," Krelthor said, and around them, representatives from 47 species voiced their assent. The sensors detected them first, space distorting as the 17 massive presences transitioned from the void beyond into the outer regions of galactic space. They arranged themselves in a pattern that suggested organization, spacing themselves evenly along a curved line that faced the defensive network. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two forces faced each other across the emptiness, each assessing the other, each waiting to see what came next. Then, simultaneously from all 17 structures, a communication signal emerged. Not words, not language as anyone understood it, but patterns of energy and information that suggested intelligence seeking contact. The communication arrays humanity had built activated in response, translating the defensive network's position into mathematical patterns, universal constants expressed in ways that any technological civilization might recognize. The exchange that followed lasted only seconds but conveyed volumes. The unknown civilization identified itself through equations and energy signatures. The defensive network responded with similar information. Questions were asked about intent, about purpose, about the nature of the approach, and finally, an answer emerged that Chen and everyone watching struggled to interpret. The 17 presences were not invaders. They were refugees. Behind them, something else was coming, something that had driven them from their space beyond the rim, forced them to flee toward the only other concentration of intelligent life they had detected. They were not the threat. They were a warning. "Oh no," Syrinx breathed, her form turning colors that suggested terror beyond any she had felt before. "There is something else out there. Something worse." Chen felt cold understanding settle over her. The Titans had been built to face 17 massive unknowns. Now, they might need to face whatever had caused 17 massive beings to run for their lives. She looked at Krelthor, at Syrinx, at the representatives gathered around her. She saw fear in every face, but also determination. They had built something together, forged unity from necessity, created strength through cooperation. "Then we will face it together," Chen said, her voice steady despite the implications. "Whatever it is, we will be ready." Outside, the 17 refugees settled into holding positions near the defensive network, not enemies but allies, seeking shelter in galactic space from something that terrified even them. The communication arrays continued their exchange, learning about the true threat, understanding what was really coming. And far beyond the rim, in spaces too distant for even the Titans to scan clearly, something moved. Something vast enough to make 17 massive beings flee in terror. Something heading toward the galaxy. The war they had prepared for had not yet begun. But now, at least, they understood what they truly faced. And they faced it united, every species in galactic space standing together behind the shield humanity had built and the Council had embraced. The Indomitable's running lights gleamed in the darkness, surrounded by hundreds of Council vessels, flanked by 16 other Titans, defended by the refugees who had become unexpected allies. Whatever came next, they would meet it with everything they had built together. Captain Sarah Chen looked at the tactical display showing their combined forces and allowed herself one moment of pride. The Council that had sent enforcement to conquer humanity now stood shoulder to shoulder with human vessels against a common enemy. That transformation, that unity forged from confrontation and cooperation, might be their greatest weapon. All vessels, she transmitted across every channel. Maintain positions. Continue defensive preparations. And keep those communication channels open. We have new friends who can tell us what is coming. Let us learn everything we can. The council fell silent, not with fear but with purpose, united at last, ready to face whatever the universe could throw at them. Together. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.